right. Let's see. Um, Anyone out there, please let me know if the audio is audible to you. It's what I always do at the beginning of my live streams. Hold up. Good. I'll wait for the live chat to see who responds. Hold on. Okay. So, I'm here again. Does everyone hear me correctly? Please let me know in the live chat. Okay, good. Let's begin with the teaching then. In this live stream, I'm going to talk about abductions, femicide, and the ritual lynchings. Well, it comes down to the following. This world, behind the scenes, is run by a hate group who worship Apollo, Satan's Nephilim son, and they want to keep the human population in this state of anxiety. Because it's in this state of anxiety that evil spirits have access to the energy fields of human beings. And by having a grip on human energy fields, evil spirits can hinder us from doing God's will. So that is the motivation behind abductions, femicide, and other types of lynchings going on. Now, about lynchings, I already explained in a previous video that lynchings are often just a result of common people just seeking relief. That's true. But the world's leaders often will ignite social tensions, knowing that it will lead to lynchings. Why? Because when there's a lynching, they now can justify the police state or whatever type of government repression they're planning. So that is the motivation why crime is conducted. You have crime incidents, and you have just crime, which is a ritual. I've spoken about militarism before in another live stream. Many of you watched that one, and in that I've explained that war is a blood ritual to keep humans anxious. And it's a ritual that the human population loves because it gives them a sense of identity at expense of their own children, or let's say their young men that they sent out to die. Now, crime is also a military thing, but it's less direct, it's less obvious. War is something you do in seasons. Crime is something of everyday life. So crime is an ongoing project by the shadow governments to keep you in anxiety. So I hope that's clear. So about abductions, one thing I want you to understand, and that is that it's very difficult to abduct someone. Let me say it like this. If you have a van outside or just a big car, and you and three people want to kidnap someone, and you just see someone decides, you know what, we're going to take this individual. You need to be three strong men with muscled bodies to be able to drag someone away, because when you try to drag someone away, they will resist. And if they scream, it will capture the attention from other people. And even when you manage to capture them, you need to silence them. So you need to put handcuffs on them, or you need to put something on their mouth, or you put a sock in their mouth, or whatever. You need to silence them, and you need to put them peacefully in the car, and they might even harm themselves by resisting. And if you don't do it well, you may get hurt. So abduction is quite difficult. That's why before someone is kidnapped, the kidnappers they spend time to observe someone. Okay? This video is, this live stream has been around 7 minutes now. All of you that are here, do you understand what I've just explained on to you? Because I want you to understand this basis before I continue. Let me know. Okay, you understand it. Good. By the way, the stream has a delay of 20 seconds. I don't know why that is, but okay, that's what I have now. So, yes, I can continue now. You may have waited 20 seconds, but okay. So, people aren't just kidnapped, okay? It does not happen that way. So, get that image out of your head that the media tries to give you, that you can be at the bus station or at the mall and suddenly you're snatched away. It doesn't happen like that. That's the fear programming to make you anxious. Because that's the purpose of abductions to begin with, is to make you anxious. So, good afternoon, John. It's evening for me already here, but okay. So, to make the abduction go smoothly, they do it in a ritual manner. Because just realize that the shadow government, they have limited hands. They are Satan's government on the earth, but they're quite limited. They have handlers who are in agreement with them that manage those abduction projects. And this is how they do it. Okay? If you want to pick up a pen and paper to make notes, you can do it. Because they are quite open with what they do. They show it in movies, or even when you go through criminal cases, you can see the patterns, because they have to operate in a pattern for your brain to be attached to it. If they don't operate in a pattern, they can't have a grip on your brain. So that's why many of those abduction cases are so similar. It's because they need to do it in a ritual way to make you familiar with it. The reason I don't speak that loud, because it's night over here. Well, I don't really have neighbors here, but just in case, I don't want to speak too loud. But okay, I'll raise my voice just 2 tones more. Look, before someone is abducted, they are selected. You get it? You get it? When before someone is abducted, they are selected, and they're not selected based on superficial things, because that may appear that way. But when you look at the abduction cases or the missing persons cases carefully, you will notice a pattern amongst the type of people that are abducted. And the pattern is that all of those people, maybe some exceptions here and there, are people that are distracted. Someone that's alert will not be placed on a hit list to be kidnapped. Remember that. Someone that's alert will not be put on a list to be kidnapped. Absolutely not. Why not? Because such an individual is alert, and because they are alert, most likely, like perhaps 99 out of 100, that operation will fail. So they need someone that's distracted. Now, who is distracted? College students, because college students are often stressing out about their exams, or they're maybe part of a sorority or fraternity, or they may have a significant other that they're occupied with. So college students are often distracted, especially these days with social media. So college students are likely to be selected for abductions. Who else? Businessmen that are not part of a paranormal cover. If you have a businessman, but he's not part of some fraternity, neither does he have a paranormal cover, because he's a businessman and he's not part of some paranormal cover nor some paranormal fraternity, he will have it harder than other businessmen. Now, such a businessman can also be selected. And who are also selected? Children, especially children from parents who don't look at the bigger picture. Parents who are way too naive are in danger of losing their children to abductions. So those are the main groups where people are selected from. So not everyone can just be abducted anytime. If you are a man in your 50s and you're drinking often, making a lot of sound, they have no interest in abducting you. Why? Because some people may be relieved that you're gone. The purpose of an abduction is to disrupt the social trust that the population has. Because without social trust, human beings cannot function in daily life. There needs to be social trust, even if it's just a basic of social trust for human beings to get along. Even in places, even in ghettos, like in the hood in the United States, there is social trust. And I want to mention this thing. The reason why gangs are so successful, because gangs function as a substitute family for young men that join them. Because you long for a community that gives you a mission and it makes you feel significant. That's what human beings are. We crave social belonging. So when the homes don't function well, the gangs become the substitute. And in a gang, there is violence, but the violence is used to give you an identity. And that's why in gangs they put up with the violence and all the abuse, because it at least gives them some sense of significance. Now, why am I mentioning this? Because that shows you that social trust is very important. Human beings can't live without it. When social trust is disrupted, people get anxious. When people get anxious, bad things happen. So, the purpose of an abduction is to disrupt social trust. That's why the targets, or let's say the victims, are often people that were well integrated in society. A child, you may say, is not integrated in society because he or she is just a child, but because it's a child, it will capture people's attention. Because people in general don't care that much about other adults, but if it's a child, they are very concerned about what happened. So those abductions disrupt social trust. And because it disrupts social trust, people are blinded. Because the shock people have that something like that happened in their community shocks them, and this shock blinds them from thinking clearly. And because they don't think clearly, they can't process what's going on. And it's during this mind fog that's going on in their head that the media comes to make a sensation of the event. Haven't you noticed that when someone goes missing, sometimes the media takes the case and they make it into a sensational story, and the masses swallow that sensation? That sensation is a secondary distraction for the population to be turned away from seeing what's going on. And by the way, whenever there is a political or economic change that's going on, or a shift, better said, that the population would not accept, they often use abductions to distract the people, and the media sensation is part of that distraction. And human trafficking and, well, human sacrifice serve two purposes. Human sacrifice is to spill blood for the demons, which are human sacrifices, and human trafficking has to do with slave labor, prostitution, and sometimes the blood sacrifices also have to do with organ harvesting. Yes, there's a multi-million-dollar business out there in harvesting organs, especially from black folks. They are quite popular. That's why you have many of those killings in the streets, but they're done by mercenaries from the shadow government to harvest organs of those men. So that also happens. So, about the selection, I already explained to you that they don't just select people to abduct. They don't. When someone is selected, and how is someone selected? This is how it goes. The Apollonians, they have local agents. You can write this down, a local agent. A local agent can be a high school teacher that teaches history or that teaches chemistry in high school. And everyone knows him as this man with sympathy who doesn't harm anyone. He's very kind, he's smiling all the time, but that's the cover. He belongs to a warlock cabinet. Okay? So he's part of a warlock cabinet, and he knows that he needs to give potential targets to the ringleader, who is the handler. So it can be that in this high school you have this math teacher or history teacher. They also like to stay within subjects that relate to their devil worship. So let's say you have this math teacher or history teacher in high school. Everyone knows him, he's a very kind man. And during class, he uses black magic, so all the students kind of love coming to his class. And because of this, the students entrust themselves to him. And let's say he looks around in class, and of course he has a date of the students, and he finds out that one of the students is becoming 13 years old soon, and that her father used to belong to some weird fraternity during his college years. What happens then is that this local agent informs the ringleader about this, and the ringleader will have people from the streets that they pay to go and inform about the father of this um, girl that's turning 13. And if they find out that the man is willing to take part of a human sacrifice, they will make a deal with them. They will tell him, you want to get a promotion at a job, or you want this and that, we will arrange it for you, but you need to comply. But if the man is not willing, then they will leave him alone, because they won't take unnecessary risks. But what will happen is that that same teacher will befriend, quote unquote, befriend some of his pupils to find out more about the now 13-year-old girl that he assigned as a potential target. And once he has a better view of this student, who her friends are, how shy she is, and all of that, he gives off the data. And when the ringleader decides, okay, this 13-year-old girl will be the one, then, okay, he did his job. And let's say let's say a week before the kidnapping happens, he will be very kind towards her. He will even give her higher grades than he usually does. And because this will distract the girl from realizing that something is off, because she gets good news, she's overwhelmed by the good that happens. And then suddenly, nobody sees her anymore. She doesn't come to school. She went to a friend, she never came home. Her parents are upset, the teachers are upset, and now, yeah, I believe, I'm not sure if they put out Amber Alerts for teenagers, but okay, the local police are giving off the warning that a 13-year-old girl is missing. And people are so shocked by what happened, and that local agent will also fake sympathy. They get a course in acting, so to do it in a convincing manner. And nobody noticed what happened. And that same guy, who actually was the one that, how do I say, that selected her as a target, will take some time during his lessons to talk about how important it is for students to let their parents know where you are. So he will motivate the students to listen to their parents and to always watch out. So he will pretend to be concerned with the safety of his students, while in fact he is the one that gave that girl up. That's how it goes. The Apollonians, they have local agents. You don't only find them in high school. You find them at the office. You find them in church. Yes, in church. You find them a lot in churches. It may be a deacon somewhere, or it may be some churchgoer that always sits in front at church. They have their local agents. And those local agents are the ones that look around them and pay attention. So that's how it goes. The local agent, who's part of some warlock cabinet, gives off the data. The ringleader decides, and when the ringleader decides who it is, they send 2 people, or sometimes 3, to look at the individual. They check, okay, our target is a guy called Robert. Okay, with that Robert, he gets out of office at 5 p.m. every day, except in the weekends when he doesn't work. But he always drives home taking that road. And he goes to the gas station twice a week. So they build up this pattern thinking, okay, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to put 3 men with a van at the gas station, and 3 of them will be placed at his office around the corner, so that one of us has to capture him. If the one near the office captures him, fine. If not, there will be others waiting him at the gas station. That's how they do it. They put their officers there, and you're gone. That's why it's important not to function in a pattern or a cycle. Because once you operate in a pattern or a cycle, you make it very easy on kidnappers to kidnap you, or you make it very easy for them. So don't be predictable. Be as unpredictable as possible. I'm not telling you to be chaotic and mess up your affairs. I'm just telling you, be as unpredictable as possible. And here's another thing. Pay attention to people that never have issues with others. Pay attention to what I'm saying here. Pay close attention to people who never have any issue with others. Because the local agents need to be off the radar of the commoners. So someone that's screaming all the time, getting drunk, and cause all kinds of troubles, they don't function well as a local agent. Because a local agent needs to be alert, needs to be able to process things quickly, and take action very quickly also. Besides that, the local agent needs to be someone others tend to trust. That's why, when it comes to child molestation cases, often they find out that the one that was molesting the child was someone the child knew. But what they often don't tell you is that many of those child molestation cases are part of rituals, and that the one that knew about it enabled it because he was the one that arranged it to begin with. Look, someone can be trustworthy, someone can be calm, someone can be all of that. There's nothing wrong with that. But when someone is, okay, let me say it like this. If you have someone, mostly it's a man because they prefer to use male because first of all, the shadow government is only available for men. There are times they use female agents to get information, but that's when they really don't have any other option. The rule is they use men. When you have a man somewhere and people are so trusting of him, they're so comfortable entrusting everything to him just like that, then that may be a local agent. I'm not saying it is automatically, but it may be a local agent. That's one of the red flags. That's why in Roman Catholic churches, often sexual abuse happens and even abductions, because often it's that local priest that's the, how would I say, the local agent of the shadow government. But because everyone calls him father and people make confessions at him because they trust him, they don't think that maybe he's involved. And because people don't expect he's involved, when the children speak out saying that, oh, that and that man touched me here and there, mom and daddy, and the priest was there, they would tell them, the parents often would say, stop talking, you're making this up, parents don't want to process it. And that's why it's often decades after the sexual molestation happens that former Roman Catholics, or some still remain Roman Catholics that were sexually abused, speak out after their parents passed away and the other adults that didn't want to hear it. That's why pay close attention to what children say. I don't care if the child is autistic or if the child is just acting like a brat. I don't care. Pay attention to what children are saying, because children don't have that ability to think in complex ways. So children cannot be narcissists. Children can't be like that. A child cannot lie convincingly. No. So pay attention to what children are saying, because often children see things far better than adults. Okay? Yes. Someone asked if I could talk about the Marine Lodge pedo rings. This is also related to the subject of abductions and kidnappings. It goes like this. In the paranormal, as a pagan, you select a deity that you're going to sponsor. Now, the shadow government deals with Apollo, Hermes directly, because Apollo leads the shadow government. And if you want to have the cover of the paranormal, after everything goes smooth for you, then you need to make a demonic contract at the office of a wizard or of a ringleader. That's how it goes. And what happens is that there are pastors out there. They're not believers. They are pagans, but they pretend to be believers. So they are those pagan pastors that lead many of those mega churches. What happens is they have a ringleader that's part of mermaid worship. Because a ringleader is the head of a warlock cabinet, and every warlock cabinet has its appointment, its specialization. So in West Africa and also in the United States, and also in some key points in the Caribbean, you have those warlock cabinets that are installed there by the shadow governments that preside over marine worship. This worship of marine spirits. And you have those pagan pastors who have churches that go there to get their charm. But in exchange for the charm, they need to victimize children, often young girls. Because shadow government directly deals, they just want to victimize boys. But with marine spirits, they also take little girls as sacrifices. So it goes like this. You have this, let's say you have this pastor in the United States, and his church has 3,000 members or 4,000 members. And he preaches the word of God, and he he's slain into the spirit. He speaks in tongues, that blah 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 nonsense they are using. And the congregation is convinced he's a man of God. What they don't know is that twice a month he picks up an airplane and he goes to Haiti. Or Haiti is not the only center of this in the Caribbean. You also have one, I believe, in Barbados. Yes, it's in Barbados, Haiti. In Cuba, you have a place also, but that's not really a famous one. And where I'm from, Curacao, this also exists there. I'm just being frank. People don't talk about it, but there's a lot of stuff people don't want to talk about. So twice a month, he goes to one of those marine centers of marine witchcraft, or marine black magic, better said. And he participates in the molestation of young girls. He, together with warlocks in his region, they select girls or young women from their congregation, that means from the pulpit or from just their neighborhood, and kidnappers kidnap them and traffic them abroad, out of the United States, to one of those key centers, which is a marine center for marine black magic. And there they call upon Neptune, the queen of the coast, and those other demonic entities, and those demonic entities will appear there, and there they will rape the children in front of those demonic entities. They will do it in ritual manners, coded in 6s and 10s, because they have to give homage to Apollo, absolutely. And they do this as payment to the paranormal. So this pagan pastor does this. He receives a potion, and the wizards put their hands on him, and he gets this paranormal shot of strength, and then he goes back home on Sunday preaching. And while he's preaching, he's making hand gestures that folks will notice, and it's this black magic that makes people fall for him, thinking, whoa, he's a man of God. Even people keep coming to the church. People even donate a lot of money to him. People pay their tithes and offerings, and people think he's a man of God. They think if I have an issue, I need to be in contact with that pastor because he's anointed by the Lord. He's not anointed. He's a warlock who's involved in raping, in kidnapping and raping children as payment to the paranormal. You have many of those pagan apostles out there who do this. But because those churchgoers are blinded by pagan Christianity, they don't see it. They don't. So just understand that many churches out there, they operate in marine black magic. It's also called marine witchcraft, but because it's men doing it, it's black magic. Because witchcraft is more on the emotional level, something that witches do, that females do, that are involved in the paranormal. Marine black magic is the norm amongst most churches today, especially churches in the Western Hemisphere. So in the United States, many churches, they use marine black magic. And many believers were stuck in going to church every Sunday, they never capture it. That's why Christ said, beware that no man deceive you. Now, it's not only pagan pastors that do this. You have bankers doing this. You have some local politicians doing this. You have some athletes doing it. Yes, in sports it also happens. Or it can be a drug dealer also. Let's say it goes like this. If you are selling drugs on the streets, you're just a local mercenary of no importance. You can be arrested or killed anytime. But if you want to become a chief drug dealer that's close to the ringleader of the warlord cabinets nearby, then you can opt for one of those marine lodges. And when you opt for one of those marine lodges, you'll be involved in it also. So these abductions happen. Too many children, or too many people in general, are kidnapped, and it shouldn't be like that. So here's one hint I'm giving to you. Okay? If you ever encounter a child in public. Now I know that there are parents who are just neglectful, they're out of their mind. You may have a child that's crying often. Now, if it's a little baby, of course it will cry often. But a baby cries often just as a baby. But when a child is 4 or 5 years old, and it has these emotional tantrums all the time, and it seems as if they cannot stop crying, even when the parents try to console them in public, be aware that child may be the victim of child molestation, sexual abuse, or those parents may be involved in some marine lodge, and the child feels that the child is about to die, or that the child feels that the child is about to be hurt very badly soon. So when you encounter something like that in public, pray. Just pray. Pray and decree immediately. Too often, commoners see unusual disruptions, but they just don't want to think about it. They don't want to process it. Especially today with earphones or headphones and with social media, they just want to go into their phone again. They don't want to pay attention to anything around them. If you encounter a child that has a lot of unrest, and you see that the unrest is really a shock that the child has, pray. Pray immediately. I'm telling you to pray. Okay, that's one thing. A second thing is, if you encounter a church where the amount of members increased very rapidly, examine that church. I don't care how much brotherly or sisterly love they have there, how much emotional warmth they have there. If that church had 20 members in 2015 and 2016, they had 300 members. And now, 2019, 3 years later, they have 2,000 members. So they had 20 the year afterwards, 200, now they have 2,000 in less than 4 years. When you see a church that grows so quickly, that's likely not from God. I'm saying that as it is. That's marine black magic operating there. So don't look at the suit. Just because someone wears a suit doesn't mean they have the best interest for you. They don't. Okay, so unlearn believing that just because someone wears a suit and they use soft language, they mean you the best. They don't. So, those are things I wanted to give to you. About femicide. I'll be still talking about abductions and kidnappings, but femicide. Femicide is the systematic killing of females. Now you may think, why would any community in the right mind tolerate the systematic killing of females? Well, you know the answer already. The world is run by Apollonians who hate females. Okay? But that's not all. The killing of females is to promote violence against women. Because violence against women is the promotion of sodomy. That's what it is. In ancient times, well, it still happens today, but of course, people want to cover it up. You had the worshippers of Kali. Kali is the Indian, or is it the South Asian name for Jezebel. In Western Africa, I mean around near the region of Nigeria and Mali, she's called Oshun. The Hebrews called her Jezebel, and in South Asia, they call her Kali. And you had the worshippers of Kali, which were warlocks who would shave their heads. They were men that were muscled, so they would work out their bodies to be very muscled. They would shave off all their hair, and they, from time to time, they would form small groups, sometimes 6 or 10, and they would go throughout South Asia, gang raping women and killing them. And it's still happening today in India. India is known for its gang rape problem. But mainstream media will not tell you what the origin of the gang rape problem is, which is the worship of Kali or Jezebel. That's what they used to do in ancient times, still happening today in India. So those men that did this for Kali were called Tuk. I believe in the South Asian language is Tuk, but Tuk refers to a Nephilim spirit also. So those Tuk men, in English called Tuk, were assassins of women. Elderly women, young women, doesn't matter. They just went around gang raping and killing women. And this led to fright amongst the people in South Asia. And to get rid of this fright, those people would go to fortune tellers to tell their fortune. And that's how the enemy kept them in this anxiety. Now this Kali cult also came to the British colonies in North America, which later became the United States. And when the Spanish Empire faded away or crashed in 1826, the United States also began to grow because the United States began to take land from independent Mexico. You had this cowboy era. And during the cowboy era, the worship of Kali became a popular thing. in the Midwest of the United States. That's where the term thug life comes from. But in the United States, the men that joined this cult would not shave off their hair, but they would form gangs, small gangs, to go around and victimize women. They would it goes like this. This also happened in Europe, I believe, in New Year's Eve. Was it New Year's Eve? Yeah, in New Year's Eve of 2017, I believe this happened. And this caused a lot of right-wing activism because around 1,000 men in Cologne assaulted young women at New Year's Eve 2017, I believe it was. And the media tried to cover this up. But there were similar things happening in Germany. So this Kali worship is still going on. Men in gangs, 6 or 10, 6 and 10 are both axes referring to Apollo, so they need to worship the beast and show the dedication of the beast. They would harass women. It goes like this. Let's say you have a town, okay? I give an example of the Midwest, of the cowboy era. Let's say you have a town, and you have a dairy, a room where women are making butter, and you have an inn over there. You would have 6 men entering that town with horses, pretending to be sojourners on their way to Texas or on their way to California. They would come with some BS story, and they would look around. And by night, when the women were about to go home, one of them would pretend to be a homeless guy or someone that needs help. And, well, when she acts in a kind manner, suddenly those other 5 men would appear and they will have their way with her. I don't have to explain what they will do. And when she's completely victimized there, then they will make ritual cuts in her. She will bleed to death. And they will sing praises unto Kali and unto the beast. And then they move on, waiting for the next season when they have to do their thing again. And as compensation, they have a paranormal cover and they get some cash from the ringleader somewhere in Texas or some other, or in California or wherever. So that's how they did it in the Midwest of the United States during the cowboy era. And there were also blacks involved. So let's keep it real over here. And later, this Kali worship of thugs are those men that conduct such things. It became associated with hip hop by this rapper that they called Tupac Shakur. His real birth name was Lizanne Parish Crooks. But now you know where thug life comes from. So also examine some of the tattoos that Tupac Shakur had. You can, by the way, Susan, I'm going to talk about femicide in China after this. I just want to point this out. So I want to have a big one so that I can show you guys. I don't want to put this image too much here because I don't really like giving attention to these creeps, but this education, so I need to show you guys. This Tupac Shakur. Thug life, referring to the worshippers of Kali, written on his belly. Because remember what the scripture says, that reprobates have their belly as their god, so they're operating on base appetites. Okay, so on his belly, thug life. 50 niggas. And by the way, the word nigga means my lord in one of the African languages. So nigger is derived from nigga, my lord. And my lord, and that term nigga was used to address the Most High by the Africans. But the Apollonians turned it into a swear word. And here it says 50 niggas. 50 refers to the 50 states of the United States. There's a weapon here because the United States is a military administration. Okay? Here, skull and bones. This comes from the pirate flag. This coded as an axe and a skull, which formed the Babylonian cross, and the Babylonian cross was used as a Roman numeral for 1000, and 1000 in ancient Greek is Helios. So this refers onto Apollo right over here. Well, this is a so-called female pharaoh from Egypt, and Tupac Amaru was an Inca emperor. So, explained right over there. Let's look at the back. Well, referring to scripture, which is mockery, laugh now, cry later, because that's what those sellouts have. They have relief now with a paranormal charm, and later they have the lake of fire. A very dumb decision, Lizane. Well, he'll pay for it. Oh, that picture, I can show it to you for education, but I will show just briefly because... Oh. Okay. For educational purposes, I'm showing you guys this also to teach you. Hold on. What you see here was a shoot from a photo shoot Tupac took for one of his albums. What you see here, see the blue. The blue refers to authority. Okay? He has the hands, the arms crossed. There's an X right over here. Legs spread, showing that he's willing to be part of the initiation. Gold around the crotch means that he is in agreement with the darkroom rituals. And you have this blank stare into the camera, kind of an hypnotic stare. So nothing about this image is normal. Okay, and I'm going to remove it now because I don't want to give these creeps too much attention. And by the way, he died at 25, and I'm 28 now. A waste of life to worship the beast for what? Okay, so now I'm going to talk about China because Susan asked about it. And hold on. Get away, Tupac. Now, first thing first, I want to show this to you. This is the flag of China. These are the stars, which represent suns. One big sun and smaller suns forming another sun. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 stars, and the shape forms a 6th sun. So this is 666, coded right over here. So these are beast worshippers, Apollonians, that run this administration called China. Just to point that out. Now, about femicide in China. The name China, Zhongguo or something, I may pronounce it wrong, but in Chinese, the name China means the center of the world. So, China perceives itself to be the center of the world, ruled by a son of heaven. That was the Chinese emperor. But you have no emperor anymore. What you do have is this regional administration that they call China. China is thought of as a country, but it's really a regional administration by the Apollonians to keep all the people within this administration in anxiety. That's what it is. So there is no Chinese nation because you have multiple Chinese ethnicities living here, and some are even at odds with one another. But this brings me to this one-child politics under this guy took over China. He had this big revolution that took the lives of many Chinese people. Some say between 600 and 100 million Chinese died. Okay, those numbers may be exaggerated, but a lot of Chinese folks died in very horrible ways. So the later came with this one-child politics for people in the urban areas. So when you take the map of China, hold on. I'll just do it like this. I think this works better. So in the urban areas of China, they came with this one-child politics. So every family was only allowed to have one child. They wanted to have population control in the eastern towns, in the coastal cities of China. Beijing is the capital. So in all these urban areas, they wanted to have population reduction. So the one-child politics only applied to them. It didn't apply to people in the rural areas. So what happened was, eventually, that many girls that were born were killed. Or when they saw that the child would become a girl, through some scan, the woman would commit abortion, because women are not that valued in that culture. Men are seen as valuable, not women. So everyone wants a son. Nobody wants a daughter. If you have a daughter, okay. You have a daughter, it's fun, but okay, but people want a son. So when the one-child politics came, they all wanted sons. If you had a daughter, it was a disappointment. They didn't always kill those children because they couldn't kill them legally, but they did it behind the scenes, or they would dump them at adoption centers, and people from the West who had infertility issues would adopt a Chinese baby girl. And many Chinese women that grew up in the West that were adopted, they were adopted because of this reason, because their parents didn't want them. So what happened was that for one, or let me say for 2 generations, they murdered many baby girls. So that later on, now they have a lack of females in the urban areas. And because in Chinese culture, you're expected to marry with someone from your own group, a lot of the men now, they are faced this dilemma because there aren't many women from their own Chinese group to marry. So what you see now in China is that marriages between Chinese men and women from other ethnicities increase. This is something that Chinese culture doesn't really want, but they have a big crisis now because the women that should be there for the men to marry and have a life with, they're not there because they killed them off or they dumped them at adoption centers. So that was femicide in China. They won't call it femicide, but that's what it is. But what you now have is that the Chinese minorities, which are numerous ethnicities of around 2-3 million, so there are numerous people, they did have a normal birth rate, and they now are overtaking the Chinese living in the industrialized urban areas. But the Chinese culture, which still has its imperial setting, doesn't want the people from the rural area to migrate too much to the cities. Because Chinese culture also has this class hierarchy installed in it. And once it becomes obvious that what they consider that the Mandarin Chinese people will depopulate because they have too few women, and many of the women are also feministic, they don't really want to have babies. Once this gets through to them, then this whole class hierarchy will disappear because it's not sustainable. So what China is doing now is that it wants to deport many of those low class citizens to foreign countries, into the Chinese diaspora. That's why China now is desperate to start projects in Africa, in the Americas. Why? Because they don't want to face the consequence of femicide on their own nation. That was going on in China. And Chinese people, in general, they're so affected by the black magic of those Apollonians that they don't see what's going on. Okay. Yes. Susan, I'm glad you asked this. It's because besides femicide and now a lack of females in the urban areas, you also have that many of the men are turning gay. Because some of the men thought, okay, if there aren't enough women for us, and for us to get a wife outside of the Chinese community, that's not done, so we might as well turn gay. So now you have a homosexualization going on in China, but you're not allowed to admit it's happening. And this, in turn, benefits the Apollonians because they want to promote sodomy. And this demographic challenge in China now provokes homosexuality. Men turning gay. So that is what makes the Apollonians happy. But the Chinese people are not happy with it, and they're also not happy with the population drop that they will face in the near future. And about India, femicide in India never stopped. When the British took over in the 19th century, it was hindered. But it was not stopped. When the British left in 1947, when the last viceroy of British India left, yet tiny civil wars here and there between the Hindus and the Muslims in the Bengal area also. So there was this context of ethnic conflict in South Asia. And within this context of conflict, the old practices of Kali worship re-emerged. And many of the people in South Asia are so brainwashed that they don't want to face this issue about their culture. What you see lately, since the past several years, well, maybe 7, maybe a decade, is that there is this hyper-nationalist tendency growing in India, where they want to protect their Hindu roots, as they call it. And there are many young girls who are militant about their Hindu heritage, but they don't see that within this Hindu heritage there's a lot of violence against women that's tolerated. I don't want to pick on the South Asians here. I don't want to pick on their defects. They are there. I made a video, I believe a while ago, in which I've shown you guys that in some places you even have this ritual there where they collect dung from cows and they begin to throw it at each other for good fortune. Good fortune never comes, but they keep doing it. So there are many defects in South Asia that needs to be addressed. And but here's one thing: in South Asia, there's bitter hatred against believers. Persecution of believers is very high in South Asia. They're not left alone. Our brothers and sisters in South Asia are not left alone. They are haunted by those militant pagans who want to preserve their defects. They want to preserve the generational defects of their ancestors, and believers who are delivered are a threat to the defects they want to preserve, including femicide. So now they're taken out on believers, which is quite ironic. The believers there want improvement. They want life in abundance, but the locals prefer the defects, including femicide. For some reason, the Most High didn't take direct actions against the South Asians yet, but I understand why the Most High probably didn't do it, because they are really destroying themselves. They do. But okay, let's look at the other questions here. Well, Susan here asked about what's the strongest Asian country? Right. Oh, let me say this. She was asking, if I'm correct, which Asian country is the most Apollonian of them all? Well, when Asia is very big, so let's divide it in regions. In East Asia, it's obviously Korea. Straight up. People would say Japan, but it's Korea in East Asia. In South Asia, it's India. But India is so big. Well, look at the more traditional areas. Those are the big Apollonian strongholds. And in Southeast Asia, someone says the Philippines, but I would rather say Cambodia. So those are the main Apollonian countries in Asia. By the way, Seoul, okay, I can point it out to you now anyway. This is the Korean Peninsula. This is Seoul, the capital. But the name Seoul, that's how you pronounce it, Seoul, refers to Sol Invictus. And Sol Invictus is no one else but Apollo. This place used to be called Hansong. Okay, I can just show you guys. Why they changed to Seoul? That is to show who they are worshipping. The Joseon dynasty, who were sun worshippers, had Hansong as the center of their devil worship. Here you see the name. Hansong. Where is it? In Japanese it was Keijo. And this guy, let me just show you guys over here. He was the last king of Korea, then it turned into an empire, which didn't last for long. But I just want to point it out to you. Look at this. Completely Apollonian. Suns everywhere. He was a bit tiny, but look at the body size. This was a devil worshipper scammer right over here. Suns everywhere. That's how fanatic they are. So about the Philippines. The Philippines was a Spanish kingdom that was established. Now it's a republic. But you still have tension between the Chinese and the local Filipino people. And it's a Catholic nation. Not everyone is Roman Catholic, it's a Catholic nation. It's a big Catholic stronghold over there. That's one thing about Cambodia. Well, Cambodia, or also called Khmer in one of their languages, it was, I would, you could say, it was a stronghold of devil worship in Southeast Asia, next to Siam. Siam is what we today call Thailand. Yes, when you type in Siam, you get Thailand. In Thailand, it's Buddhism that flourishes. Cambodia also. But in Cambodia, you have the Angkor Wat, which was a visit center in Southeast Asia. Until this day, many children are offered for sex services, and also you have gangs there, thugs that go out and assault women. They may not, let me say it like this, because India is bigger, the amount of female victims are higher because of the high population, but killing of women also happens a lot over here. And I don't want to focus so much on Asia. In Honduras, it also happens. Oh, yes. Here. Here's another problem with, let me say it's another another place with femicide going on. And it's a Catholic stronghold also. You even have murder capitals over here. So this area is not that safe. Let me look at if there are questions here. Susan asked about Asia and the Asian race or the Asian ethnicities and how it relates to the Nephilim. One thing, it's not only for Susan, for everyone here. Asians are very deep involved in devil worship. Okay? I'm not just talking about the Koreans and Chinese and Japanese people here. I'm talking about people in Southeast Asia also. Asia, you think you see devil worship in Hollywood and on Wall Street and in Disney, and you think you saw it all. Asia is filled with devil worship, and they worship a lot of Nephilim entities there. Some of you here may have watched horror movies from Hollywood in the past, or maybe not. But don't you know that most of the horror movies that Hollywood makes, the Hollywood producers, they go to Asia and they check the paranormal activity over there, and the black magic and witch shops goes on over there, and based on the real life events that happened in Asia, they go back to California and they write their scripts for horror movies. So Asia is deeper in paranormal fields than we think. It's due to the skyscrapers and the, let me say, the fast technology. Almost everyone has a mobile phone there. It's due to those high-tech gadgets that you don't see the devil worship. So this relates to the subject about abductions, femicide, and ritual lynchings. I spoke about ritual lynchings before. So we're talking about Asia anyway, so let me just show to you. Kappa. No, I'm not talking about this. Oh, by the way, let me just explain to you right away. I didn't plan to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. What do you see here? This is a bronze, right? You see two women with their backs to each other, and you have the name Kappa. Well, Kappa in Japanese refers to Nephilim entities. Okay? So why did this Italian corporation or this bronze take that name? There is no such thing as coincidence. Okay? So many of those bronze, they use names referring to demonic entities. Nike is one of them. But okay, let me see. Kappa. in Japan, you have those manifestations of Nephilim entities throughout history, even until the 19th century. And those Nephilim are called Kappa. This is not really, or this is just an artist's rendition of it. But they were those reptile froggish creatures. And sometimes they would masquerade as commoners, as farmers. And these entities would often hang out in villages near rivers, and they would kidnap women and small children. And warlocks and witches in Japan, they consult these entities. And if you watch Dragon Ball Z in the past, now Dragon Ball Z, I used to watch it. This was one of my favorite cartoons. What do you see here? This is a Kappa right over here that they portray as a master. They wear orange, which refers to Freemasonry. So what is showing here is that the warlocks get their power from following the instructions of the Kappa. So this one was made by a Japanese guy, Akira Toriyama. But you also have similar cartoons from other Asian countries. They show you the devil worship they're involved in. And of course, when Goku, the lead character, transforms into bigger strength, he gets blonde hair, blue eyes, with a fierce look, which refers to Apollo. So that's white supremacy right over here also. Here you see the blue ace referring to the energy field. So just know that. Someone asked. Look, Susan. About Catholics, whether they are in Haiti or they are in the Philippines, wherever they are, most Roman Catholics think they're worshiping Christ, so they don't mean any harm. But the system they are involved in is different. And that system is the same everywhere. So there's no difference between the Catholic Masonic system in Haiti and the one in the Philippines. It's one worldwide system. And oh, Susan's talking about, Susan has another question about the abductions of people that claim they were taken away by aliens. So we're going to talk about that now. This was a hot theme several years ago about alien abductions. A lot of people that vanished claimed that they were abducted by aliens. They didn't know any better. But what most of those people didn't realize was that they were not kidnapped or abducted by aliens. They were abducted by fallen angels. Because this is angelic technology over here that they use in the heavens, which is not meant for us. And I mentioned before, the Greys are former heavenly princes that turned against Christ, they committed vampirism to be able to involve themselves in physical fornication. And a similar thing they're doing now, that they've lost all their masculine, I won't say beauty, beauty sounds too feminine, but all their masculine strength they had as heavenly princes, they've lost them all. And now they try to do the same thing that they did in the days of Noah, but they can't do it only on the earth. And they can't really vampirize human beings that easily anymore, because they're already deformed completely. So this is what alien abduction comes down to. Those are not extraterrestrials, they're extra-dimensionals. Black Auroras ask about the Kappa being in water, and about sea monsters. Let me go into that also directly. Hold on. Now these are artist rendition, but okay. Sea monsters maps. Okay. Let's see if everyone's here. About maps with sea monsters on them. It goes like this. The pagans who made those maps, they were worshippers of those Nephilim entities. So they had knowledge where those Nephilim entities resided. Because this one you need to understand. A Nephilim is not a natural creature. So they don't have a natural habitat like natural animals do. So a Nephilim shouldn't even exist, so they cannot just roam around freely like animals and humans do. They are stuck in key locations. So those that made maps were aware of it. I believe this is a map of Scandinavia, but okay. And about sea monsters, these are just artist renditions. These are giant Nephilim creatures that are left from the content of that are left from the time of Noah, when Neptune brought forth those sea monsters, because all the sea monsters that existed and that still may exist somewhere are descendants of, hold on, this guy over here, Neptune, who is a fallen angel that also vampirized human males in order to be involved in physical fornication. He was a prince in the heavens. Okay? Now he's a loser awaiting the lake of fire. But he's praised as a god by the pagans in many places. He's the one that brought forth those sea abominations, of which a few are left in the oceans. Because remember, those beings cannot just reproduce freely or live freely. They can't, because they don't fit the ecosystem of the earth. That's why. Susan, it's documented indeed, but here's the thing, Susan, when you mention such things, people brush it away. Even though the people that were adopted, it was documented that some of them were pregnant, some of their reproductive systems were tainted. They will just put it somewhere on a bookshelf and forget about the case. I just explained to you what's going on. It's the former heavenly princess that became those ugly entities now. They're the ones that are doing it. The I'm saying the wizards that rule this world are involved with those entities, absolutely, because they are the government of those entities on the earth. They're the human government of them. And technology like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. By the way, Bluetooth refers to a Viking king in the past. Well, at least that's the explanation of it. Such technology is neutral. You can use them for good, but knowing that human population is anxious and in relief seeking, they are now using Wi-Fi technology to keep people trapped to their mobile phones. That's what they're doing now. Most of the hardware that the military provides for those interdimensional beings are just for distraction. Is to make the population think that aliens are coming after them. Um, Good that you mentioned this, Susan, because that brings me to the next thing. This is a very old movie. And I'm not talking about India's Independence Day. I'm talking about yeah, this 1996 Independence Day movie. I believe is that the one with Will Smith? But anyway, movies like this, Independence Day, what's the purpose behind such movies? Well, I'm going to explain it to you. They want the masses of the world to be frightened that strong intellectual beings will come to take them over. And this is a card that they want to use in the future in case all the other distractions fail. Because the wizards know very well that a distraction can fail. And they also know that every distraction has an expiration date. So when all the other distractions fail and they desperately need something to scare the human population, this is what they're going to use. A fake alien invasion using holograms to pretend as if there are giant spaceships out there, but aren't any, and you'll have small military vehicles, or yeah, let me just call them vehicles, flying around, pretending as if there's an invasion while there isn't any. That is one of the cards they might use in case the current distractions fail. Let me look at. Hmm. Hmm. I didn't miss any questions, so that's good. So, what's important for you believers to understand is that abductions, femicide, and ritual lynchings, as well as the worship of Nephilim, they're all connected. Mhm. So, the main, I'm saying this, I will explain the reason why abductions happen, what's behind femicide, which is the worship of Kali or Jezebel. Ritual lynchings are when the shadow government itself brings social tension, which will lead to lynchings. And I also explained that many churches operate in marine black magic, so they're not in agreement with Christ at all. But all of these things are to keep the human population anxious. So, if it happens in coming decades that people begin to see through all of this, the last thing they will use is the fake alien invasion, or as they call it, Project Blue Beam. But that's why they put out the Independence Day movies and all those alien movies, just to let people get used to the idea. So, okay. I explained about abductions, femicide, and ritual lynchings. The reason I'm addressing these subjects is because churches don't talk about it. Churches talk about a lot of stuff, sometimes even deep stuff, about the occult, but they don't reveal what is being done against us to keep us trapped in a cycle of destruction. They don't tell you that. And especially don't tell you what to do about it. Because Christ gave us power to trample on scorpions and serpents and the whole camp of the enemy. The whole camp of the enemy implies all these things that they do. Abductions, femicide, ritual lynchings, fake alien invasions. Believers, as a collective, we have the power to trample upon all of this. And nothing of that will harm us. But that is when we walk in the strength of the Holy Spirit. Right now, believers are mainly distracted by doctrine, which are rooted in emotional conflicts. So, believers that are stuck in emotional conflicts of pagan Christianity, they miss out on the strength that has been provided for them to walk in. And that's why many believers are not effective in the daily life. That's why many believers are plagued by the same things that plague worldly people. Sometimes they're plagued worse than worldly people because they don't walk in the strength. They don't walk by faith. So, believers, understand the following. If there is, hold on. Okay. What do you mean with backtrack? What do you want me to repeat again, Susan? Let me know. But, okay, let me finish what I was saying. If someone is aware of danger and they refuse to inform you in a constructive, beneficial way, then they are part of the problem that's haunting you. If there is a gang out there that's causing harm to the community and kidnapping people, doing all of that, then people of that community should inform you, not that you will become frightened nor paranoid. They should inform you so that you are alert, you can guard yourself, so that you can deal with the issue in a beneficial manner. The moment you have people who are aware of what's going on, but they don't want to process nor deal with it in a constructive way, they are enabling that same thing. And those Babylon churches, they enable this harm on believers. Well, last, someone asked about the Christian sect of Sabians. In this live stream, it's about abductions, femicide, ritual lynching. So I won't I won't digress too much to other subjects, so I will leave that maybe for another video. Okay, I get what Susan is asking here. Just understand that the Catholic Masonic system, they Christianize black magic. That's what they do. In Guatemala, there is this big Roman Catholic church where you will find Mayan black magic being practiced in that church, but they give it quote unquote Christian names. In that church, it's done openly. In other places, they hide it more. That's what the Catholic Masonic system does. Whatever is filthy and abominable to the Most High, they Christianize. So they trick people into accepting it by claiming it's in the service of Christ, while the exact opposite is true. Okay? So let's look. About the movie They Live, because this relates to this, so I'm going to just briefly explain what the movie They Live. It's a movie from 1988, so hold on. So let's see if this goes well. Yes. Look at this. Distracted by one tiny detail. And that's how a lot of commoners are. They notice a tiny thing that's not in harmony with the rest of the background, but they don't look at but because that they don't notice the bigger picture. Here you have a guy wearing a sunglasses and you notice there's something weird. Let's go here. What's going on here is as follows. This movie, They Live, the name already should alarm you. They live. Who are they? They means it's not us. So a group that doesn't belong to us are living. Okay, that's one hint already. And you have this lead character that wears a sunglasses that shows him the intentions behind the world he's operating in. For example, you see a computer ad over here. This is from the 1980s. So you may think this is just technology that was growing and they were advertising with technology. But the real purpose was to trick people into following the trends, so they wouldn't be aware of what's going on around them. So they had to obey the distraction. Then you have this other, hold on. Yes, it's around here. So you have this billboard with what is an alleged female, but okay, let's hope it's a real female. Maybe not, but okay. You have this female figure, which you may think that you're just promoting a holiday by showing a woman on the beach, but it's really a sexual trigger for the wedlock. They want young men to be addicted to these impulses. They trigger the young men so that they would end up in a wedlock. They don't want to trigger the men because they want them to be in healthy, fruitful marriages. They want them in a wedlock. And that's the real intention behind this advertisement. So this guy sees through the deception. And he's quite shocked when he sees the real intent of the things around him. And he's a bit shocked. Well, a bit. Let me explain this. So this is men's apparel. So this is a fashion store for men, right? Or it refers to male fashion. So actually, this is actually a program telling you this is how a man ought to be, according to society. So you're not allowed to question what they're telling you about how men ought to be. Now you don't need special glasses to see this. If you look at the bigger picture and you just examine things, you would be able to find out the real intention behind the things that are put in front of you. And he finds out that everything around him is constructed in a ritual way to keep him trapped and distracted. Here it comes, hold on.
Thank you.
Stay asleep, no thought. So all those magazines with all that news, with all that diversity in media, it's just to keep people trapped. This appears interesting, but what's the real agenda behind it?
What's your problem?
And this is what the movie is famous for. You have those beings that are controlling them that are not them. And they appear human from the outside, but if you have the ability to see through stuff, you would be able to see what they are. This movie, They Live, is...
How's it going? Fine, thank you.
This movie is actually the wizard showing you what type of world you're living in. And that they, the wizards, are the sellouts, completely demonically possessed. They serve as vehicles for Satan's claim on the human population. But most people who operate in this black and white duality don't notice anything. They are asleep. But those are alert, they will notice the creeps. There are many ways you can use the movie They Live as a parable, but that's the main purpose of it. So Okay, it's solved. Okay. Good. There was some issue with my streams, but that's over now. I'm happy. Just understand, believers. This whole fear construct called society is just to keep you away from doing God's will. That's it. And about organ harvesting. Organ harvesting is about offering organs to rich customers who have health issues. So that's what it's about. Well, there is no such thing as human cloning. That can't happen. You can't duplicate a human being because we are spirit beings. You can't duplicate a spirit entity. It's not even possible to duplicate a physical entity. But a robotoid is a possibility for an evil spirit to manifest through. And you don't even need real human organs for that. You just generate a chemical sculpture and then you force an evil spirit in it. And an android is just a robot that's used for IT or for events. Androids are mainly from Japan, robotoids from Russia or the former Soviet Union, even though they're also made in other parts in the world. Mm. About elderly abduction, that happens in Japan a lot and in other Asian countries also. It also happens, it actually happens everywhere, but it happens a lot in Asian countries. And the reason elderly can easily be abducted is because often the relatives don't really pay attention to them. Sad but true. Well, it's not really necessary to expound on on these things because these things are happening. And what it comes down to is the following: the enemy has um, a military structure of distractions to distract the human population. That's what it is. So robotoids, androids are there to distract you. So it's not just Hollywood and Disney that they're using. All of these genetic experiments are just distractions. That's what it comes down to. Everyone that's involved with the shadow government is there because they're in agreement with Satan, or else you're not there. So they're not paid in monetary remuneration. Because the wizards, they live in palaces and in luxurious places for free. And they share everything, they have everything in common. The warlock cabinets are paid in cash, but only to do their purpose. Because they're not really into cash, they're into worshipping the beast. It's the mercenaries on the streets who think money is so valuable, they're the ones that receive a high paycheck because they are useful idiots to the shadow government. So let's see if I forgot any question of you. There was a short delay in the stream, but Let me see. No, I didn't forget. I didn't forget anything. Okay, that's good. So, remember what I said in the beginning about abductions. Do not be predictable. If you go to the supermarket every Tuesday in the evening, consider going at another time now. I don't care if it's convenient for you to go every Tuesday because you're out work early. Do not be trapped in a pattern nor a cycle. Okay? Don't. Because when you're in a pattern or a cycle, it's very easy for predators to locate you. Christ said to be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Christ said, I sent you as sheep amongst wolves. That's what Christ said. Therefore, be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. We ought to be wise as serpents. So that about abductions, about femicide. Just know what's going on. It's not random men out there losing their minds and assaulting females. That's what they want you to believe so that you will live in a state of anxiety. There are random men out there assaulting people after they drink too much or they use drugs, but those are very, very tiny incidents. Kali worshippers or Jezebel worshippers do go around in gangs attacking females. But they can't do it everywhere. If you have a place where believers are strong in their walk by faith, they can't enter in. They can't. About the people that are captured already, they're either used for prostitution rituals, which involves torture, or they're just killed as blood sacrifices. And you have people which become living sacrifices. They're put back in society, completely dysfunctional. Why? So that they will cause havoc in the community. That's why. And about Africa. Africa is the main continent with resources, material resources. Till this day, most corporations go to Africa to get resources for mobile phones or for other stuff they're selling. But there's one thing. Many people love Africa, but not Africans. The same with blacks. There's a difference between Negroes and Africans, or between Israelites and Hamites. But okay, you have blacks, which are the Negroes, and then you have Africans. Okay? A lot of folks love Africa because Africa has a lot to offer, but they don't love the Africans. A lot of folks love black culture, but they don't love blacks. So what do? They want to hijack what blacks and Africans have to make use of it without giving proper credit and honor to those to whom it belongs. So, there are killings going on in Africa, ritual killings. That is because the wizards want you to think of Africa as this doomed place without any potential. Why do you think that always when they're showing poverty, they have to put an African little child in it, or they may have to put an African face? Why? Because they want people to think in their heads that all African people and all blacks are poor, pathetic creatures that can't take care of themselves. This is to advance white supremacy in institutions. They don't want popular racism, but they do want to justify institutional racism. That's why they need to put Africa, as well as Africans and Negroes, in the category of, well, how should I say it? Of being third-class creatures. And hold on, let's see if I have another question that I forgot to answer. No, I'm not going to show the teen. I don't even know if that's. No, I'm not going to show that. That's obvious already that they promote sodomy, so I don't have to show that. I showed it in other live streams also. So, this live stream has been for 2 hours. If there are not any questions anymore, I'm going to give you 5 minutes, or let me say 3 minutes to ask questions. If there aren't any questions, I will shut down the live stream because I want to keep it around 2 hours to 2.5 so that people that later look back are able to make notes and capture what I was saying in the live stream. I answered the question about the elderly already. The abduction of elderly happens a lot in Asia. It also happens in the West. Also in the Netherlands it happens. But people just don't care most of the time. Straight up. That's why it continues to happen. For example, here in the Netherlands, it often happens that people are dead in their own house for weeks, sometimes months, and they are discovered later. There was even an elderly woman last time. I don't know how long she was in her own living room. She was dead, and even her pet was a cat began to eat off her corpse. When they found the corpse, the cat was eating out of it, eating from the corpse. So people don't really pay attention to the elderly that much. That's why it's easy for elderly abductions to take place. Well, about abductions and people that are recruited as living sacrifices, what happens is that sometimes when they abduct people, they subject them to so much psychological trauma that those people can't think clearly anymore. And when those people can't think clear anymore, an evil spirit takes over. Or multiple evil spirits take over the individual. And such people are then sent back into society. And often they end up doing things and not even aware they're doing. Because it's the demons running them without them being aware of it. That's why they were so psychologically traumatized. If such an individual comes in contact with believers, the demons become frightened. And the demons will try to keep that individual away from you. Because once that individual remains in contact with the believer, and the believer is strong by faith, that believer will break the spell that's on that victim, and the victim will begin to recover. So sometimes you encounter people, and they just can't be near you. They see you, and you see they're frightened, and they just run away from you. And you think, what's going on here? It's not you. It's the demons inside of them that are frightened by the strength you're walking in. Well, me, I already explained it. We ought to overcome and overrule until Christ returns. Because this crap that's going on here will only escalate further until Christ returns. Does it mean now that we just have to sit down and be fulfilled with sorrow or sadness because it happens? No. You walk in the strength, and because you walk in the strength, you overcome this evil in the world. And environment, so your influence will limit it and crush it. And believers as a collective have the ability to crush all of this. Now, I know based on prophecy that many believers are deceived, so many believers are used by the enemy to keep other believers trapped. Unfortunately, that's what's going on. That's why you have pagan Christianity, and that's why you have this Catholic Masonic system, where the evildoers pretend to be on our side just to get our support. So, believers have to just be wise as serpents, be practical, and always take action when you have opportunities. I'm not talking about preaching the gospel, because the gospel is being preached already. I'm talking about being alert. Because one thing you need to understand about those Apollonians, they are alert of what's going on so that they can take advantage of whatever's going on. Believers, right now, often is when bad stuff are happening that we become aware that we begin to ask what's going on. We should be able to see things coming long before it occurs. And we can anticipate what's happening. That's where we ought to be as God's people. Well, it's not just prayer, it's really just walking by faith, walking in the strength, which also implies not sponsoring taking patterns that don't align with Christ. The reason I'm making these live streams and these videos are to inform you in a Christ-centered way, because you have those that inform you to trick you in darkness. I inform you so you become aligned with Christ. Hold on, let me go through all the questions. Look, if you sense that there is abduction, ritual, sacrifice, or whatever going on, just pray. Pray that disruption and chaos, earthquakes, and disasters will befall the evildoers around you. Send confusion in their midst. Send exposure, they're exposed. Pray in such ways. Pray forceful prayers in Christ's name. And the Holy Spirit will guide you to what is proper for you and what's not. So, this whole mentality of going to church every Sunday and hoping that one day Jesus returns and going to fix it all, of course Christ will return. We know that. But meanwhile, we ought to be active. Because the enemy only has a counterfeit. He doesn't have the real. We have the real. So it's the enemy that's frightened of us. But because we have been convinced by pagan Christianity that we don't have anything, which is false, which isn't true, that's why now we are convinced that we can't do anything about it, and we just have to, well, sit back and just find a way to cope with it. The moment believers walk in the strength of Christ, it's game over for the Apollonians. Look, Mimi, there's something one of the viewers asking me, what should I do? Look, whatever God's will is for you, He will work it out with you. So you ought to remain in prayer and fasting and in movement. It's not the purpose for you to lock your doors and pray in a corner and wait till Christ returns. No. Prayer ought to be your lifestyle. And because prayer is your lifestyle, you will recover from the brain damage that the world caused onto you. Because all of the deceptions of this world, they cause a light brain damage in your brain. So when you begin to walk by faith and to renew your mind, that brain damage is taken away, your brain recovers, and now you'll be able to perceive things as they are. Think about the movie They Live. Once you're renewed in your mind and your brain recovers, you'll be able to process things as they are. The spells hinder you from processing things as they are, and that's why you remain trapped. That's why you remain in addiction. That's why you remain in depression. That's why you remain in poverty. The moment you can process things as they are, you are a threat to the enemy's kingdom. So let me see. So I'm going to shut down this live stream. I'm going to upload videos as usual. I'll do more live streams in the future. Just walk by faith so you won't be deceived. Remember, Christ gave us collectively as well as individually power to trample on scorpions, serpents, and the whole camp of the enemy, and nothing shall by no means harm us. Do you believe him? That's what I'm asking you. Do you believe him? I agree with Christ.